Today, let's talk about thrums. What are thrums? Well, they're bits of fiber that are knit into your projects to create little woolly bits inside. As the garment is worn, they felt, and they create an extra layer of really squishy, yummy warmth. Thrums are created from roving or unspun wool. Today I'll show you very quickly how to add thrums to your knitting. You'll need a roving that has a staple length of at least 3 inches. You're going to just pull the roving apart and not cut it. Make sure that you pull your fingers apart about 4 or 5 inches. If the roving does not want to pull apart, push your fingers back a little bit more. This will give you an idea of how long your staples are. You'll want a piece of roving that's at least 3 inches long. For chunky knits like these, I found that about 5 inches was the best length for me because anything smaller and the ends tried to poke out. Once you have your fiber, you're going to very carefully pinch off about 1/4 inch, like so. You can make them thinner or thicker depending on the yarn that you'll be working with to thrum, but each little bundle should be about this thick. Typically from one pull off of this ball, I'm able to get anywhere from 18 to 21 or 22 thrums. To make your thrum, bend in the ends, and you can give them a little twist if you want. This just smooths them out and makes the fibers less likely to come apart. So this is a thrum, and it's ready to add to my knitting. I'll do another. So I'm just going to take the ends where they start to get thin and bend them in. I'll do the other side as well. Kind of smooth it down. If you want them to get a little thinner, maybe you're working with a DK weight yarn instead of a chunky, you can also sort of gently twist them between your fingers. Don't over agitate them, but this will push those fibers together a little bit more and thin it out a little bit. So when I use thrums, I like to have all of mine made from a full piece. So I would make all 20 or so thrums from this piece, and then I would start knitting. I'm ready to add thrums to my knitting. I'm going to go ahead and insert my needle tip just like I would knit. And I'm going to wrap my yarn around so that it's ready to pull through. Then I'm going to take my thrum, and this one's already been folded in half, and I'm going to take the loop part where it's been folded in half and just lay it across the yarn and pull both through. Then I'll knit, and it's typical to have 3 stitches between or 5, so that as you go through your various rows, you can alternate. Now I will get my yarn ready. I'm just going to grab the 2 ends so they meet. It makes a loop in the middle. I'll place that loop right over the top and pull both through. I'll show that one last time. I'm going to knit 3. So my yarn goes over the top. I'll take my thrum and bend it in half. Find that loop. The loop goes right over the top. I pull both through. And I'll finish my row. I'm going to turn my work around and work back to the place where my thrums are. You can see that the side area here is in garter stitch, And my Thrums are in stockinette. I feel that working Thrums on the smooth canvas of stockinette makes them a lot easier to see from the right side of the work. As I'm coming up to this on the wrong side, I'm going to need to work through both the thrum and the stitch. And then I'll purl 3. This locks the thrum into place. It keeps it nice and snug. You can pull on the ends, but you don't want to make them too tight because you'll lose the pretty V on the front if you pull too tightly. But your stitch and your thrum are nice and snug in there. So I've got one more to do. So I'm just going to purl through both the thrum and the stitch. Then, if needed, you can give it just a real gentle tug. And these are just going to be kept long. How often should you place thrums in your knitting? Well, typically you'll see thrums placed every other row. So if you're working flat, you would place them on your right side rows and then work across the stitches on the wrong side rows without new thrums. You can place them organically or in a pattern. I'm working on a pattern, and so I place them every 4th stitch, 2 rows before, and now I'm ready to do another thrummed row. To do this next row, I'll work over the thrum stitch, 1 more stitch, and then place my thrum here so that it's worked spaced evenly between the 2 thrums I've did before. And then I could continue my knit 3, place a thrum pattern. You can see them here. So on my right side rows, my pattern will alternate. You can see that here. So this is the most common type of pattern you'll see. But you can also freestyle it and just go organic. So place a thrum every few stitches. They don't have to line up perfectly. The main thing is not to space them too widely apart, or you'll lose that wonderful warmth on the inside and you'll have bare spots. This is my freshly thrummed slipper. I just finished these this morning. You can see I haven't worn them, so everything looks nice and clean. You know, there's no pills or anything from wear, like most slippers will get in time. But if I turn it inside out, you can see all my little thrums here. So this is a thrummed slipper inside out. And all of these fibers gives the squishiest, yummiest warmth and coziness to these slippers. Last Christmas, I made a pair for my son. It's a different pattern, but he's really loved them. He's been wearing them a long time. And now I'll let you see the inside of his. So with friction and time and a little bit of sweat from the feet, that's normal. Because of the non-superwashness of the fiber, it actually felted smooth into a nice, thick, cozy coating. You can see I probably could have put a little bit more in the heel here because he's sort of worn down the heel. So I could actually come in and sew in a few more thrums here if I wanted to. But that's the beauty of these thrums, is they will felt in over time and retain their squishy coziness and their warmth. Here's a quick tip for adding a thrum after the fact. Maybe you forgot to put one in, or maybe, like my son's, you could use just a little extra padding here in the heel. I'm going to take a piece of fiber, and this time I am going to rub it through my fingers to give a nice sturdy piece of fiber to work with. Next, I'm going to put it on a tapestry needle. And I'm going to leave the needle close to the top of the loop. I'm going to insert the needle into the base of the stitch that I want to add the thrum to. And I'm going to pull the needle up, but I'm going to make sure and leave a good inch of my fiber in the slipper or in my project. So I'm going to add my thrum to this stitch here. It's in the base of that stitch right now. So I'm going to take my needle and follow the stitch up and go underneath the two legs of the stitch above it. Just like so. And I'm not going to pull tight. I'm going to let it be nice and squishy. Then I'm going to take the needle and go back down into the same spot where I brought my needle up. You can see that it added a really beautiful little V, just like my other little V's. Now I can take my needle out and just let these loops be in the slipper. You can kind of tack them down a little bit. So you can see I've added a really nice new little thrum where there was that little bare spot. And I might add another one right here just to give him a little more padding at the heel of his slipper. So in that way, if you make a mistake and you miss a thrum, or maybe you just want to add a little bit more padding in certain spots, that's how you would add them in after the fact. So thrums are a really fun way to add warmth and coziness to patterns. If you search for thrums on Ravelry, you'll get hundreds of patterns that come up specifically for this technique. These are the Cadute slippers by Isolde Teague, and I apologize if I say that incorrectly. This would be a more advanced slipper pattern because it has short rows in the toe. You work the bottom of the slipper flat and then you pick up your stitches to work the tops. So it was a bit more challenging, but it's a very well written pattern with multiple sizes. Other patterns that can be thrummed include hats, headbands, or mittens. If you want to use a great mitten pattern, I suggest the World's Simplest Mittens by Tin Can Knits. It has a lot of different sizes, so simply by going up one size larger than you would have made, that will give you room for your thrums. But you can also add thrums to your favorite patterns that you already knit. So this is the family slipper pattern from Church Mouse Yarns and Tees. It's a free pattern on Ravelry, and I added thrums to it, no problem. The biggest thing you want to consider when you're adding thrums to a non-thrummed pattern is that the thrums take up space. So you may need to use, say, a slightly bigger needle or a slightly thicker yarn than is suggested by the pattern. You may need to increase your stitch count by 1 or 2 stitches to give yourself room for the added material inside. The family slippers are a pattern that are meant to be kind of stretchy with the garter sides, and I just used a slightly thicker yarn and one needle size bigger than the pattern suggested. So these actually fit great, but you may have to do a little bit of experimenting with your patterns if they aren't meant to be thrummed. So now that you know how to thrum, what great project are you going to make? We would love to see your photos. Enjoy!